Hey guys, welcome to the LGFA research pod. My name is Aidan Burns and I'm here to present my research on why do ex-players not get involved in volunteering in club activities once they retire. So just a brief introduction to myself, sort of who I am. I have worked sort of in sports development, disability sport for about 5 years, both here in Ireland and in Australia. I've worked in various positions from operations manager for a sports coaching company, volunteer recruitment coordinator, disability sports development officer, and a disability sports coach. Been involved in the GAA as a coach for about 14 years. Basically coached at all grades, right from under 12 through to seniors, both men and ladies. Currently, I'm a sort of coach and selector with my local club, the senior football team. I'm also involved heavily with coach development within my own club. I currently sit on a number of subgroups, such as our coaching committee and the club development subcommittee. And I've also been recently tasked with creating a new coaching games development pathway for our club over the next 5 years. So that's also a group that I've been sitting on. Just a brief introduction to the history of my education. I have a BS honours degree in sports coaching and performance from the University of Ulster in Jordantown. I'm currently enrolled in a sports coaching and performance master's degree. I'm a level 1 GA qualified coach, and I also have level 1 disability football within the IFA and level 1 IFA national coaching certificate as well. So my job currently is I work for an organisation called PlayBoard. So my job is essentially I work within the school-age childcare sector, sort of 4 to 12-year-olds. So going into schools, nurseries, after schools, and I deliver training to teachers and practitioners on the importance of play within childhood and focusing on things like developing resilience and emotional well-being in children and young people. So my research then, as it previously says, why do ex-players not get involved in volunteering in club activities once they retire? So why this topic? Well, this piece of topic was part of my dissertation for my sports coaching degree. So for voluntary sports organisations to operate, they need to recruit and retain volunteers to run the day-to-day activities of the club. So the GAA has been for some time now concerned with a lack of continuous engagement from its member volunteers. Also in 2013 suggests that one of the main challenges actually faced by volunteer sports organisations is the task of recruiting a significant number of volunteers. And that was very much the case in my own club. You know, we're struggling to recruit a significant number of volunteers, especially among our ex-players. So over the last number of years, I'd sort of noticed, as I was coming to the end of my playing career, I was getting into coaching a lot more, and sort of the players that I had been playing with over the course of a 12 to 15 year sort of playing career, they were just sort of walking away and not really getting involved within club activities. So there's lots of skills, lots of experience being lost there, and it was something I felt needed addressing. So from there, I had a conversation with our club executive, and essentially what happens, this research sort of was born out of that conversation. So the aims and objectives of my research basically was threefold. Firstly was to gain a better understanding into why ex-players currently do not volunteer within club activities. Secondly then was to identify the main reasons for what this were, and see if there's something the club can do to actually address it. And finally then was to use the information gathered to make recommendations so in the future we can attract volunteers specifically within ex-players. So just going to give you a brief overview of the review of sort of literature around sort of sports volunteering. So again, the GAA was and has been concerned with a lack of continuous engagement from its member volunteers for some time now. This was quite reflective of the wider literature on both sports volunteering, both in Ireland, throughout the UK and in Europe. The literature suggests that a positive club environment and continued engagement with club members is beneficial to encouraging continuous volunteering. Therefore, continuous feedback from members is necessary to understand the perceptions of the social atmosphere. So essentially just getting feedback from your members to find out what's actually going on the ground and making sure clubs can tailor their approach to that. Furthermore, there has been a sort of shift nowadays towards a trend called episodic volunteering, which is essentially people sort of dipping in and out of volunteering rather than the continuous volunteering that you would normally sort of associate with sort of old school GAA coaches and stuff like that. So again, the GAA potentially could be ways to reach out to ex-players with short-term commitment opportunities and try and engage play in that way. Retiring players in most sports have a critical role to play within the underage structures, especially within community sports organisations such as the GAA. As they come through these structures, they already benefited from modern day coaching methods and can serve as a role model for these younger players. And to recruit new volunteers, it's important that the interest of the club align with the interests of its members. As a sports organisation, its volunteers mainly come from its membership base. So the methodology, essentially how I done the research. So it was a mixed methods approach via surveys and face-to-face interviews. So due to COVID, the face-to-face interviews couldn't take place, so they were actually recorded over WhatsApp voice notes. There was an eligibility criteria set out to be able to take part, and after the eligibility criteria was met, there were 60 ex-players were identified, 41 of which completed the survey, and then a further 6 were actually interviewed via the WhatsApp voice notes, 3 male and 3 female, and all sort of 4 codes within my club were represented within the surveys and within the interviews as well. So what were the key themes, key findings then? Well, essentially, there was 3 main themes that sort of came out of the research. The first one was really about the attraction of volunteering. The second one was then about potential strategies and policies that the club have. And then the third one was around future volunteering. But within each sort of theme, there was a sub-theme as well. So you can see here, the attraction was really about selling the volunteer experience to members, to community members as well. Strategy and volunteering was really around developing a volunteer strategy or having more professional structures in place. And then the future volunteering sub-themes was really around the youth structures and the club making sure that they were at the sort of heart of the community. So the first key theme, then, attraction. So when participants were asked, why they did not volunteer within club activities, there was a number of reasons for that. Lack of professionalism within the club, don't know what actually opportunities are available within the club. There's a lack of communication and no real incentive to volunteer. Within the roles that were available, there's no clear definition on what was actually outlined, what were the responsibilities. People had said that they didn't actually like the culture of the club. There's no short and long-term goals set by the club, and there's a lack of support for volunteers. But the biggest one, the most popular answer is over 50%, sorry, nearly 50% of participants answered that they simply were not asked to volunteer. So again, that's something that should be addressed. So then how we look now at when participants, what they actually said when they were asked why you would actually volunteer. So most popular answers were that they had a passion for the GAA, coaching awards such as CPD and coaching badges. They had family ties and links to the club. They had children that played for the club. There's a social aspect to get out of the house and to learn new skills. But the most popular answer was to actually give back to the club. So over 70% of participants stated that they would like to give something back to the club, and that's the reason why they would volunteer. So what can we do then based on these answers? So in analysing the data, a key sort of the key theme was very much linked to actually selling the volunteer experience. Asking ex-players to invest their time in the club, and the club will invest in them and their families. Ex-players have a key role to plan in creating a culture people actually want to be part of. So over 80% answered that they had family links to the club and the children involved in the club. 70% stated that the main reason that they would volunteer is to give back to the club. The majority of respondents, over 50%, also answered that they had a passion for the GAA and for the club. And another popular answer people gave was to get CPD opportunities like their GAA coaching qualifications as well. As previously stated, others identified that they would volunteer for the social aspect or just to get out of the house. So it's based on these answers, it's very likely that if the club were to actually sell the volunteer experience, let people know what the club has to offer, align its values to the members' values, it does stand a greater chance of recruiting and retaining ex-players as volunteers. So here, guys, what we have is some of the quotes of the participants and what they said. I'm not going to stand and read all these out in the interest of keeping the time, but the great thing about this is you can actually pause the video and have a wee read through them, and I would encourage you to do so. So the second key theme then was around strategy and policy. So when participants were asked about future strategies and policies to actually attract volunteers, essentially what can the club do to attract new volunteers, they stated that targeting ex-players or players coming towards the end of their career. They could have better lines of communications with its members. They could have a volunteer officer, someone who's designated to undertake that role, clearly outline the roles and responsibilities for each person, outline clubs' short and long-term goals, have information nights for members on volunteering opportunities, so what's coming up and how the club, what they plan to do sort of in the future. But actually 100% of people actually stated or mentioned somewhere in the data that the club should create a volunteer strategy and invest more in its volunteers. So again, based on those findings, what can we sort of do? Well, the key theme again was very much linked to creating a strategy that's going to help attract and retain volunteers, again, namely a volunteer pathway strategy. So what we can do is we can assign a volunteer officer who's responsible for this strategy within the club. What it'll do is provide a more professional approach and give new volunteers and current volunteers a direct contact person, should they need to, should they have any issues need to arise, they know exactly who they're going to. Creating a central volunteer register where people actually can jump on and they can list their name, their contact details, and the broad interest of areas that they want to volunteer in. That way the club can align sort of their interests with what the club needs as well. The club should invest in its volunteers by creating a volunteer pathway where roles, responsibilities are outlined, as well as CPD opportunities for all volunteers. So again, making it very clear that when you do come in to volunteer within the club, what essentially is going to be asked of you and what essentially you're going to get in return as well. Have clear lines of communication on the club's short and long-term goals and link these to the volunteer strategy. Clearly outlining how the club needs volunteers to help it achieve its goals, both the short and its long-term goals. So essentially tell people about the work you're looking to undertake, where you're looking to go within the future, and both short and long term, and create buy-in that way. So based on these answers, again, it is very likely that if the organisation were to create a volunteer pathway strategy, assign a volunteer officer, clearly outline the club's need for volunteers, especially from their ex-players, and the club's willingness to invest in them, it stands a greater chance of recruiting and retaining volunteers. So again, guys, just like the first one, this is just some quotes from the participants that took part in the research project. So again, like, have a pause, have a wee read through it as well. So the third key theme then, so when participants were asked about future volunteering in the club, so essentially what they would like to see the club do in the future, some of the answers was that they should align club's needs with its volunteer interests, develop a volunteering strategy and assign a volunteer officer to oversee it. Encourage players to volunteer while still playing, especially within those juvenile structures. So try and generate that bit of buy-in while people are actually still playing. Have clear lines of communications with its members on what each volunteering role consists of, i.e. time, responsibility, commitment levels. Really sell what the club has to offer, inform people of its short and long-term goals, and getting back to being the heart of the community, having social events, family fun days, getting people through the gates, getting people through the doors of the clubhouse and stuff like that will really help attract your volunteers. So again, from now you can probably start to see that there is sort of a key theme around communication, development and strategy, aligning the needs of the clubs and the interests of the club's values with that of its volunteers. Again, focus on the youth structures more than adult ones. Over 41% stated that should be happening in the future, and that's what they would like to see. So what can we do then? So again, when analysing this data, it was very much linked to the future of volunteering and sort of what the club should focus on, and namely the two main sub-themes were the youth structures and actually getting back to being the heart of the community. So focus majority of club resources and juvenile structures more so than adult teams will create buy-in from club members. Recognise the commitment and dedication that ex-players gave once they retire. A small bit of recognition could go a long way to retaining them. Ex-players or players nearing retirement could be identified and asked to get involved in the youth structures, act as a role model for the children coming through. Encourage senior players to volunteer while still playing. Offer them incentives like their coaching badges, mentoring from more experienced coaches. Invest in them, and in return you're asking them to invest in the club. Get back to being the heart of the community. So again, having social events, having member nights, family fun days, and community days really promote a very strong community focused ethos and make sure that the local community and the members know that the club is for everyone. Its facilities are there to be used. Again, doing things like that will generate the buy-in you need. So again, based on these answers, it's very likely that if the organisations were to take these suggestions on board, it would stand a greater chance of recruiting and retaining volunteers. Again, guys, this is just some of the quotes that the participants said. Like I said previously, just pause the video and have a wee read through them. So summary then, just basically a brief summary of what the sort of findings tell us. Findings tell us that you need to recognise ex-players' contributions to generate buy-in from them. To create a volunteer pathway and link those to the club's short and long-term goals. Be really clear about where the club's looking to go in short and long-term and how volunteers are going to help them get there. Assign a volunteer officer to oversee that strategy and to be the face of it, and that person should also deal with any kind of issues that may arise. Have clear lines of communication right throughout the club. Transparency about each role and the commitments that it requires. Simply being upfront and honest with people, letting them know exactly what the club's going to do for them and what they can do for the club. Again, link the club's values to that of its member base is absolutely key. Have plenty of opportunities for continuous professional development within your membership and your volunteers. Promote early buy-in to volunteering where possible. Again, that links back into promoting your ex-players, so your players coming to the end of their careers. You're trying to get them to buy in and volunteer as early as possible. Current players linking them back into the youth structures as well. And really focus on becoming the heart of the community and focus on the juvenile structures as well. But the overriding theme of this sort of piece of research was really about selling the volunteer experience. Your club is a great place. Let people know about it. Any kind of good work that's going on in the background, definitely let people know what's going on. Guys, that's me. Thanks for listening and hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, there's a couple of contact details there. I'm happy to answer any questions from you. Thanks. Bye-bye.